Citadel.com. I have on the phone with me Misbah and Sabrina, and we are going to talk about 19 and married. There's a lot of TV shows right now that are 16 and pregnant, and now most recently Miley Cyrus is 19 years old and got engaged. And so we're here to kind of discuss where we were at 19 and whether it's such a great idea to get engaged and married that young, or if it's better to wait and, you know, become more mature. And I'm sure just by the lead-in you can tell which way we're leaning. We did some brainstorming before we started this call, so we're just going to jump back into our discussion. So Sabrina,
yes,
19 years old, how were you?
When I was 19 years old, I was a sophomore in college, and I was a kid, you know, like I was playing lacrosse, I was going to class, sometimes I was, you know, hanging out with my friends, I was social, my mind was in a completely different place almost 10 years ago than it is today. I do, however, want to say that it's like, you know, making these types of decisions, like Melissa, you mentioned Miley Cyrus, it's really circumstantial, right? Like, it's type of life that you live. You talk about young Hollywood and young celebrities, and I say this like without trying to, you know, sound mean, but most of them are not gonna go away to school. You know what I mean? Like, most of them, a large majority of young actors and singers and entertainers in Hollywood, that's their life, that's their job, that's their profession. And so, you know, I think for a lot of people like us who are sort of normal, I guess, like they live more normal lives where, you know, you go to college and you have to get jobs. I think especially as parents of daughters, your parents really want you to be settled, you know, they want you to be independent, they want you to be, yes, at some point interdependent when you're married, but they want you to be able to take care of yourselves. And so a lot of that is financial. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So, you know, you have someone like a Miley Cyrus who can financially take care of herself, and, you know, the man that she's marrying is obviously doing well for himself as well. So it's like, you know, I think if these kids were to like go off and go to college for 4 years, I think they'd have a very different perspective. But, you know, I'm a huge advocate for marriage. I think when you find the person you want to be with, like, you should be with them.
I truly believe that in order to be somebody's wife, you really need to know who you are first. And you need to be able to bring something to the table besides, you know, the fact that you're the woman in the relationship. What can you bring intellectually? What can you bring spiritually and emotionally? And I think that those things develop over time, at least for me. Like you said, Sabrina, some people can get married at 19 and it works for them. I know that I'm definitely not the same person that I was when I was 19 years old. And we were talking a little bit about the people that we were dating when we were that age. And, you know, I think everyone has that one relationship when they were younger and they're just like, what was I thinking? And that relationship happened for me when I was 19. And you know, Beyonce has this song about, you know, I've dodged that bullet, and that was definitely my bullet that I dodged. So I'm very happy to say that I'm not in that relationship anymore. But, you know, it's just once you pass that stage in your life, and for us it was going to college. For other people it can be traveling abroad. For someone else it can be, you know, moving out on their own and getting their first real job. It can be any type of life stage. I think once you come to the end of that period and you move on to your next chapter and you establish who you are as a person and you can stand on your own 2 feet, that's really when it's the best time emotionally to kind of move into that next chapter of your life, finding a mate and finding a spouse.
I was 19 years old. I think that I had a lot of I felt like I was an adult. I was going to school full time. I had a part-time job to try to pay for my bills and trying to work as much as possible. But even in that point, I was not mentally ready to be married. Whether it was, even if I had found John at that time, like, there's just no way. I was too immature. I had no financial responsibility. Waiting a few years and kind of getting more real-world experiences with finishing school. When John and I started dating, I was living on my own with a roommate, and just how much I had changed. I had, you know, gotten rid of my credit card debt, and I did so much growing up in a short amount of time that it's really beneficial more for our marriage, as opposed to if I was 19 and said, hey, I'm gonna get married and whatnot. I do have friends that got married young. One of my best friends, her and her husband started dating in high school, and I think she was 15 and he was 17, and they didn't get married though until they were I think it was our last year of college, so like 2020, or they were at least 21. She was at least 21. So they still dated a long time, and even they grew up at that point, you know, even though they were together for such a long time. And I think that it's more just, you have to be mentally prepared and mature. And I know that a lot of the young celebrities, they do mature a lot quicker. Sometimes I think, like, especially with Miley Cyrus, since we're talking about her, that she's matured so fast and so beyond her years that, I mean, she might feel that she's making a responsible decision. Her parents, maybe they feel it too, but I think that she didn't get her time to act like a kid. So I'm wondering, like, down the road in her marriage, like, will it survive because she never had those young years? Because you've seen couples where, like, they got married young and they didn't really get to have fun, and then they, like, start later on in their marriage and it kind of doesn't work out for them because they're in two different spots. So that, I mean, that's a possibility too. I think with John and I, like, we had our young years. We, you know, did the bar scene and the club scene and the whatever scene, and now we're, you know, home buddies on a Saturday night watching TV. And
Melissa, you mentioned the word, like, you know, if it's, like, beneficial, like, for kind of like both people, and Miss, but you were talking about really knowing who you are. And I think, like, one of the things too that you have to remember is, like, when you're 19 years old, like, you really do think you're an adult, you know, because you're at a place in your life where you just, I think starting from age like 16, you think you know everything. And that kind of continues on, because when you're in your 20s, you talk to women in their 30s and they're like, oh, when I was in my 20s, I thought I had it all figured out. And then women in their 40s say that about women in their 30s. And so it really is kind of like this lifelong process of growing and learning.
How were you when you were 19? Could you see yourself being a good wife? I mean, with how you are now, would you say, yes, I could have handled it back then, or would it have been different? And what do you think about Miley Cyrus, you know, being 19 and engaged? Do you think that her parents are setting her up for failure or success? What do you think? So leave us a comment and we'll talk to you later on. Thank you.